Welcome to the Amy Edwards Show. I'm your host, Amy Edwards, and we are here to uplevel our lives and become our best selves in the most efficient way possible. We're learning from experts all the time, and today's no exception. I'm so excited to welcome Rory Mitchell. Rory is not only a podcast coach and a prolific podcast host, but also a life coach. And you specialize in so many interesting conversations and getting our voices heard. And I'm so excited to talk with you and welcome you today, Rory. So thank you for joining.
What an intro. You know, I was getting up this morning. My allergies are kicking in, but I said, you know what? I'm not going to leave you hanging, but we're here today. So let's get to it. How are you?
You know what? That's what it's about sometimes, is just showing up, because so many things can happen when we want to cancel. I actually was thinking this was 30 minutes later than it was. And so I was like, should I cancel? And but you know what? Instead, I was like, no, I want to do this. And I know we're going to have a great conversation. And no matter how we show up, it's as it's supposed to be. And right before, you were having some technical difficulties just as we were getting this together. And you were like, it's like the universe didn't want us to do this. But I don't believe that. I think we just have obstacles all the time. And it's just another thing, because that's life.
It's setting us up for greatness. You know, I feel like greatness is inside of us. You know, I had a conversation back at the beginning of the year with Evan Carmichael, and he says, everybody's got a Michael Jordan inside of us, right? So yeah. I ask your audiences, who's that one person they resonate with? And what's inside of you, and how do you build for a better tomorrow?
Who's yours?
It's a laundry list of people.
If you had to pick something that leaps to mind right now, who would that be?
Honestly, it'd probably be Michael. It probably would be Michael Jordan, because after watching The Last Dance in 2020, when we were in the lockdown, there's a lot that I learned just about watching those 10 series and just knowing that he's a no nonsense guy, you know? There's a lot that he brought to the table from his teammates that he's enlisted into himself. You know what I mean? That winning mindset, you know, some people like to say the winning mindset, the Mamba mentality, you know, from the late, great Kobe Bryant and things like that. But it's just about just knowing who you are and cementing that, right? What is your legacy you want to leave in this world, you know?
What is yours? Because, you know, you started in fitness, and I know that's probably why a lot of these sports figures really resonate with you. You started in fitness and moved into life coaching and podcasting. And so what was your story that moved you in that direction? What moved you into leaving this as your legacy? Or, well, for right now, who knows what your legacy actually will entail?
That's a beautiful question. You know, it changes all the time, right? Depending on how people word the question, but health and fitness is right. You know, I remember 2010 being over 300 plus pounds, finding myself, finding my identity, going through a breakup, you know, enlisting myself with the right people. And I said, you know what, let me focus on what matters. And it was just by training people, you know, mentoring people in that department. Before you had the Instagram models, I was actually posting all the tutorial exercises, you know, before it became a fad thing. But now, in 2016, I said, it's time to find the element of voice. What does that sound like? What does that feel like? And how can I command just a group, a community, into understanding that, you know what, you have it inside yourself to find your own voice, like what we talked on our podcast, you know? But for me, it's just power of speech element. This is the instrument of our deliberation for us to go to what it is we want to do, you know, and things like that. So everybody's got it. We have the power of the voice is communication, you know, but it's for us to set that apart, you know.
What percentage of that is listening for you and that feeds your voice?
It's a great question. It comes full circle. I'm going to say it's 100%. You got to listen, right? Because you got to know how to, it's like, think about it from this perspective. We're doing this podcast. And if I wasn't listening to anything you said and I came on here with an agenda, I'd start talking about a whole bunch of different things. You know, I could talk about fitness. I could talk about podcasting, but you're asking the right questions, you know, to get the mojo going, you know, so it's 100.
Well, thanks. And I appreciate that answer. I know it made me think of like politicians when they go into something and it's not a conversation. They're not ever really listening, you know, they're just have their own agenda. And I think sometimes we can enter conversations like that, so many times. Do you look back at your life and are you able to see a shift? Do you feel like you grew into that? Do you feel like it was something you didn't do and then you understood how, or how did it evolve?
You came with some good questions today. I wasn't prepared for all this, ladies and gentlemen.
I know
Yeah,
you're like technical difficulties, and then
it's
we're
it's
jumping
all
in.
about growth. It's all about growth. Where do I start? There's so many different elements. The evolution of Rory Mitchell, right? So, man, you talk about fitness, right? That's one thing. You talk about podcasting. It also works. It also goes into with work, people you socialize with, friends, family. You heard me talk about dating, right? Different
Mm-hmm.
people in the dating pool that you've dated. If you don't learn a lot about yourself, right? You can learn through it, through family, through business, through the people you date, and you find yourself. You find what resonates with yourself. You find out how people are receiving you. And for me, it was just understanding that sometimes we're in environments, we're in cities, we're around places that don't have our best interests. But it's for you to find your interest. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. I mean, it is up to us, and it's up to us to take those experiences and convert them into learning about ourselves, because ultimately that's the idea. to get better here because of all that's happening out there, and I would think that getting into your fitness and really losing that weight was probably a pretty pivotal thing for you.
It
What
was.
made you even decide to do that? How'd you even get into that mindset?
Oh boy, I always telling this story. Dr. Eric Thomas, E.T. the hip hop preacher. If you want to breathe, as more as you want to succeed. Wait, I can't remember how it goes. It's been a while. It's
All right.
you listening to this, you'd be like, come on now, Rory. Just his audiobooks, his speech, his YouTubes really shaped and shifted my mind. Right. So when everybody was listening to music inside the gym, I was listening to him talk, right, on YouTube, and just keep pounding the pavement and putting myself in a regime, waking up early, going to bed early, right, eating the right food, just putting my mind in the right frame of what do I want to do to become better, right? Because there's so many distractions out there, so many,
Mm-hmm.
we look at news and people are sad and depressed, and there's this case and that case, and there's this amount of violence and stuff like that. But it's like, you got to surround yourself with the right elements that's going to challenge the best mindset for you. Right, Amy?
Well,
And a
yeah.
lot of people don't know how to do that because we're so quick to make excuses. You've heard me say this. We make more excuses than we make adjustments. So what are those adjustments in our life? Well, if you want to feel healthy about yourself, you got to eat better food, right? You got to read certain books or listen to certain books, right? Do things that are going to elevate and shift your mind to make you mentally sharp. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. What do you do when you have setbacks, even back then or now? Like, how do you navigate those? What do you do to pull yourself out?
Great question. So I've been in a little bit of a transition myself right now, working from home. So that was its own pivot. So I'm going to use that type of scenario. And what I realize is that looking at what my schedule is going to produce. So if it's going to be hectic, I got to know how to just go through my week. Better yet, go through the day, because not a lot of people can wake up, go to the gym, edit a podcast, create their meals, make time for family, make time for friends. You know what I mean? So I had to set all of that up weeks ahead because my schedule is not really going to change. There's parts of the schedule inside of it that can change. So it was always just making sure, where am I going to put all my energy? If this week is going to be hanging out with the guys, well, guess what? I know that's going to be Saturday. Maybe that's going to be Sunday, but that's already set ahead of time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Cooking your meals. I see so many people say, oh, I don't like leftovers. I don't eat leftovers. Well, what? You got to get that Tupperware. Well, better yet, get the glass. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Create your meals, separate it for the day, for the weeks, depending on what you got going on. Invest in a deep freezer, ladies and gentlemen. Like, come on now, invest into that. You know what I mean? and just know how to just seize the moment, grab it, you know?
Were you always a planner? Because this is like serious planning. And then moving past that question too, let's go into like balancing spontaneity and planning. Because I think a lot of people can be averse to this because it sounds like you're losing something about life and the spontaneity of it. So first, were you always a planner or did you move into that? And then we'll talk about the spontaneity.
I think planning was always a thing because juggling between working a 9 to 5 job and being in the gym. So I had to balance that because I know what those time shifts are going to look like.
So you already had some habits
exactly.
like instilled. Because I think that I'm always, talking about habits and bettering our habits. And it sounds like you really already had a good foundation of those habits.
No, absolutely. So setting that up is the biggest thing, right? Because if you don't set up those habits and those principles, you're just going to hamster wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened at some points. But then, you know what? You got to just work your way through it. The thing is, the ultimate sacrifice you'll see with high achievers, as far as in business, entrepreneurship, content creation, a lot of people are not going to know how to resonate with us. That is going to be family, friends, and relationships. Those take the biggest hit. And you have to be around people that understand that mission. And in life, there's a lot of people that did not understand what that mission is involved. And now they see it. Now they're like, okay, I see what he's been talking about for the last 5.5 years, the last 7 years, the last 10 years. They always say is you change your inner circle every 5 years? A lot of people say that's not true.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, no, but believe it or not, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. You have some good how do I say it? Some good soldiers around us, friends, right? Some people walk with you to the journey and then they drop off. It's life. It's what happens, But you inherit new people. You inherit new networking groups. And I'm all about networking, finding the right people to network with. Like, fun fact, ladies and gentlemen, took me and Amy 2 years to connect.
That's
Something happened. Digital age. Maybe it caught the virus too. I don't know.
It just happened when it was supposed to, really.
Exactly. Of course.
I'm a believer. So do you schedule I want to ask more about maybe inner circle at first. How do you handle those relationships that have fallen away? I mean, I know that for me, I'll experience it with friends and people that I still want to keep in my life. But at the same time, I can tell it's just not like we're in different places, and that's not to say mine's better or anything like that. It's just to say it's different. It's a different path and it's diverging. And so how do you navigate that and how have you handled that in recent years?
It's a great question. And here's where I tell everybody to buckle up. People are not having the best interest. You have to remove it. You have to remove your energy from it. Right?
How do you do that? How do you do that?
How do I do that?
Yeah.
You want the long story or the short story? How long do you have?
I don't care. Give me the medium story.
A medium story?
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say is a lot of people expect you to pour into the cup, right? But when you stop pouring in the cup and you take your energy away from it, you'll then see who's really for you, right? There's been a lot of times where you knock on those doors, you make those calls, you make those texts. People respond back. But when you see you constantly doing it each and every single moment of the day, eventually you're going to say, is this person really for me? Are they really for me? Mm-hmm. And then when you see them not return that back, that's when you know. And that's when you have to respectfully, kindly take your 2 feet, take your bags, and just walk. Because it's not healthy for you. And that's with great friends. I've had some great people around me. I get it. We're all getting older, but is it getting older or is it that we're just in different lanes? And that's okay too. Maybe mentally we're getting to a sharper area in life. That's okay too. But if you're not, here's what I'll say is, if you don't have the right inner circle around you, but you want to be a part of the right inner circle, ask those questions of those people that you see doing the great things in life, right? Ask those questions. Be like, hey, listen, Amy or Rory, help me. We may have the answer, but we can't guide you through your journey through life.
Right.
Because that's a different chapter that needs to be written. You know what I mean?
I like that. A different chapter that needs to be written. Yeah. Justin and I were talking the other day, and he said, I just have such a hard time understanding not having a growth mindset. And I was like, I get that. The person that's closest to me, we both have this growth mindset. And I know probably dating, if you were dating and stuff, it's pretty hard when you keep finding people that don't have a growth mindset. And I don't really have a question here. It just seems related to that inner circle thing, and really recognizing your own growth mindset or your own mindset, and finding someone else that's willing to fill up the cup too, willing to keep encouraging, willing to keep growing themselves.
Are you ready to up-level your pleasure practice? I have in mind, and one of the tools that I've used is from Wands. That's WAANDS. One of my favorite items that they have is the cervix wand. It is their #1 best-selling glass pleasure wand for vaginal and anal de-armoring. That means more sensation. That means more getting in touch with your body. It's designed for cervical and G-spot stimulation, and it has helped thousands of women become more connected to themselves and their own pleasure, while supporting them to heal pelvic pain through self-yoni massage. So if you are curious about getting more in touch with yourself, then I have an offer for you. You can get a discount using my code Amy Edwards, but if you use the link in the show notes, you can get 20% off from Wands. They have so many other beautiful items to choose from, with a large selection of 100% pure crystal pleasure wands. They create the most gorgeous, luxurious products that encourage you to honor your body, celebrate your sexuality, and live in pleasure, which is a big part of what we're about on this show. And yes, I use one myself. So go today to wands.com, that's WAANDS, and use the code Amy Edwards for 10% off, or use my link in the show notes for 20% off of your purchase from Wands. Again, my favorite is the cervix wand. It is trademarked and it is amazing. Take it from me. Check it all out and the reviews on wands.com. That's WAANDS.com, and use my link in the show notes for 20% off.
The word you just said is dating. Dating is challenging now, because when you're getting into the spaces that you want to get into, a lot of what you see, whoever you're dating doesn't understand that. And they think that you're going to leave them behind, when that's not even the truth. And I've always been completely transparency, leaving the most clear cut notes. And anytime I start anything with somebody, I say, this is the podcast. This is a priority. You're also a priority. But you've come in here and you've seen the things that it is that I'm doing. You have to accept that, because all I'm doing is talking about people getting better.
I think anybody that says that to you is the right person.
Exactly.
If they're like, I'm afraid you're going to leave me behind, you're like, you're not doing the work. Because anybody who's living in that fear and lack space, they're not right for you. So it's kind of good. They probably weed themselves out early.
Yeah. And what it is, it's a lot of jealousy, right? And it shouldn't be jealousy. I don't know, why would you want to get jealous of somebody that's growing into their own? Is it because they expect to see the little shoulder rub you're supposed to take them with? It could be things as, oh, well, you don't post me on social media, or you don't really introduce me to this person or that person. It's like, listen, when the time will come, it will come. That doesn't mean I'm hiding you. I get some crazy Q&As. Some people are like, are you dating the people, or have you gone on dates with people you've had on your podcast? I'm like, no, it's all business. It's strictly business. Now, are we in DMs and we're on emails? Yes. But that's connection. We're trying to see how we can build with each other, because there may be an opportunity where I could be in a different city next week. And maybe I got to have that connection piece with Amy. You've been completely transparent about the man that you're dating. There could be an opportunity where it's like, hey, just hypothetically speaking, is there a possibility that we could meet up? Maybe I could reserve your studio or something like that. Something like that, right? That's building connections. But a lot of people don't see that. They just take things literally.
Well, that's their own thing. They're getting threatened by it because they're not doing the self-work enough to be, moving forward and in that growth mindset. And adjacent to that too, when Justin and I started dating, I had to make it clear. I was like, I'm really honest on my podcast. And so what goes on with us goes on with me. And then I talk about what's going on with me. And that's not to say I talk about every single thing. I don't, but I talk about a lot of it. And even the things I don't talk about, I can relate into a bigger lesson and keep it kind of maybe not so personal and a little more vague, so you have to find somebody that's secure enough to be okay with those things. Cause that I knew that's what I'm looking for. And the right person for me is going to be able to handle all that. And you get to a point where you're just like, cool, we're not a match. We're not a fit. And that's okay, because this is the right thing for me, So and so it's been, that part of it is a really interesting journey where you're in a business of not only bettering yourself, but also really putting yourself out there. And I think that comes to maybe with right back to that communication that you were talking about, and finding really healthy ways to communicate with each other, which has been a big theme for me and Justin, just really getting there and being able to listen in a way that's not taking it personally.
No, and that's so true. Communication is the biggest thing, right? Especially as podcasters. That's what we do. We communicate, we talk, right? And I can have 2, 3, 4 hour conversations with somebody of the opposite sex. It's not hard because I can craft that. I can shape that. You know what I mean? It's not only just about podcasting, but it's about connection. You know what I mean? So that could be in the morning and that could be at nighttime. Sometimes you get in deep conversations. Like, I'll tell people this is the best relationship tip I can give somebody.
Okay.
If you can talk to somebody that's in the early stages and you guys can go 2 hours nonstop, 3 hours nonstop, 4 hours nonstop, there's something there. There's a connection there. You don't miss a beat. It's when the stagnant starts happening and there's those awkward pauses. That's when you know there's something going on. And that's when you're going to have to understand is what has changed. If we've went the whole year where we're going 2-3 hours nonstop, but year 2, year 3, it's there's awkward pauses. What's the gap? And you got to be open and you got to be honest with yourself to ask those questions. What have I missed? How am I showing up? How is that person showing up for you? Those little key indications, those indicators, people, is what we need. But some people miss them.
How is your honesty with yourself? Because for me, I feel like so much of it has been really getting honest with myself. And that helps me show up in that way of, I don't know, those awkward spaces and stuff, understanding more about myself helps me in that way. So what's been your journey with being honest to yourself?
In what perspective? In dating or in business?
I think in more of a general way and getting in touch with yourself. I think in a way that is just really about your own truth and maybe how do you stay in touch with being honest with yourself? Do you have practices around that? Do you journal? Is it these conversations? What is it?
I think the biggest thing that I learned coming into 2022 is having those boundaries, right? And knowing how much I can take, because there's a lot of people that request a lot of things from you, right? And that's the reason why I made that transition to work from home, because I needed to get away from being in a space where I have a lot of eyes and a lot of energy, where I need to protect my own energy because of the things that I want to get to, right? And a lot of people are going to say, well, Is that running away from your problems? No, sometimes you have to just remove yourself from settings to be alone, be able to sit alone, maybe have one or two people that you're going to need to connect with in your frame of work, but that be okay, right? But still be able to sit within to the things that you want to sit into. So with me personally, one of the biggest thing is this, you say about journaling, but it's about just sitting there and asking yourself a couple questions. What do I want to do a month from now, 3 months from now, so on, right? How do I want to show up? I'm going to show up for my family. When I say family, mom, dad, right? How am I going to show up for my friends? If I'm dating somebody, how am I going to show up for them, right? Setting those expectations for yourself so you don't go underneath the bar. Make sense?
Oh, I love that. I mean, that's part of more your planning too, though, but you're putting it in a really intentional way of how you're going to show up for yourself and the boundaries that you're going to set. And then the trick is actually doing it, sticking with it. You know, how do you keep yourself accountable for those things?
Got to. You just got to be accountable. Say that you don't
have any tricks or like, tricks? What do you do? Do you write it all down and keep it somewhere? Yeah. I mean, like, for me, I have to print it out, I think, and read through it every day. I'm going to introduce the family to your family and my audience to this thing called the phone. Oh, yeah. I use it there.
Everything.
That's where my lists are. Mm-hmm.
And the Notes app is the most undefeated app on my phone. And I'm telling you, if anybody was to take my phone, they take my notes. But guess what? I have it backed up on several different devices. So at this point in time, it doesn't matter if I lose the phone. You know what I mean?
So you write them all down in your Notes app.
Absolutely.
And then review it how often? Like daily or?
You know something that's going to sound really, really weird? I'm always in the Notes app at least 2-3 times in a day, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's different jot notes that actually go in there and things like that. And it's just making those connections. And I'll say another one too. Power of voice notes. Right? I have in my phone right now, like 3 to 4 different conversations right now that are all through voice notes. And those are just little 30-second check-ins. And you'd be surprised of how people get back in contact with you. Because people are like, wait, voice notes? Well, he's talking to me in voice. Let me do it. You're setting a trend. You're setting a habit. You're building that structure, that connecting. You know what I mean? So it's not like words are getting missed. If I send a 10-second message to you like, hey, how's going on? How's your Monday? 9 times out of 10, well, my Monday's been this. How's been yours? It's not like just one way text. Like, texting is garbage. I'm sorry. I'm done with it. I send more emails now, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, so back to your notes, I use mine too. And one of the things that I really like about the Notes app is that it feels alive. Like it feels to me like I can add to it, take away from it anytime I want. And it just evolves all the time. And I feel like it's constantly improving. So I would say if somebody's wondering about that, just write anything, just start. And it's not going to be perfect. And then from there, it grows and it turns into something that you really feel good about if you're, writing something. Do you agree with that?
Of course I agree. Yeah. Come on, we're in sync here. We're in sync.
Yeah, we are. We have a lot in common.
And I'll apologize. Like, I feel like every time I'm talking, it's like my nose wants to run. So I'm kind of like this in the camera and stuff like that because, people are like, what's wrong with this guy here?
I didn't even notice, honestly. I did not even notice. I'm just listening to you.
But that's transparency now, though, right? I'm being transparent with my audience. People are like, okay, why does he keep doing this with his nose? Is everything okay? I'm okay, guys. It's just, I don't know, this back end summer allergies business. I'm not a fan of it, man. What's going on?
It's happening down here in Texas too, no doubt. Because where are you? You're in Canada, or where are you?
Canada.
No.
Canada.
Where are you?
Canada. Come on now, Toronto. Come on.
Toronto. Right.
Toronto. When are you and the hubby going to make the long-awaited, anticipated debut to Canada?
I've been to Toronto too, and I really liked it. So, but it's been a long time. I know.
But I asked when you two are coming. You two.
I know. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, let's just put it out there in the universe and then,
Next year,
it'll appear. Next year. Sounds great. We'll
in
head up there.
studio podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We could talk a lot about relationships too.
Let's do it.
I would love to.
Let's get it. Let's do it for sure.
I wanted to go back to one thing that you mentioned earlier, and that was this difference between protecting your energy and running away from something. Like, that's so cool. I haven't really thought of it in that way before. And I'm big on protecting my energy, which I kind of just think of as staying in tune with myself and staying aware and giving myself space. But a lot of people probably could perceive that as running away. But I think you could probably speak to this, about the difference between that.
Protecting your energy and running away?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So protecting your energy looks like this. What's the best analogy I can come here with? Okay. You're in the schoolyard. Let's take it back when we were kids, right? You're in the schoolyard. The bully keeps picking on you, right? He keeps pushing you around. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Some people would think about that. Close your eyes and think, what are you going to do? Tell the teacher or fight the battle yourself or run away? Well, you fight the battle yourself, you're going to get in trouble. You tell the teacher, you're still going to get in trouble by the bully, or you walk away. The power of walking away makes the bully going to have to run after you, right? But if you do it the right way and maybe say, hey, listen, what you're putting out to me is not something that I like. It's time for me to walk away from that. 9 times out of 10, we're kids, so our minds are not seasoned, but think about it from an older perspective. That person is going to have to reflect to themselves. Why am I picking on this person? Why am I creating all these mean gestures to them? Transition it now to life, right? There could be that bad relationship, men, women, right? You could have that narcissistic man, that narcissistic woman gaslighting you. What do you got to do? You got to walk away from it. But that's a different type of walk away because you can't really say much to a narcissist. Sometimes you just have to just flick the switch and say block. Block button is such a cool little mechanism that we have in our phones. I use it. And a lot of people are going to say is, Rory, well, why do you block? You got to block certain people when you give them everything that you can possibly give them, and they're not giving you the exact same thing. I'm going to say that again, right? You could be giving somebody everything in this world. It doesn't even have to be about money, but soul ties, right? You're looking at communication ties. You're showing up for them when they're sick, right? You're showing up for them when they need you the most. When you're taking calls midway through work. This is reality I'm talking here, right? You're saving them. But the question is you're going to ask yourself is, are they saving you in the process? Are they saving you in the process? Are they showing up for you?
Mm-hmm.
When is the time they come to you for, hey, how can I serve you? It's not just by showing up on the phone or through text. Sometimes it's having that flesh to flesh connection.
Yeah. Blocking is a good example of that. I'm glad you brought that up because I have always thought, not always, I'm sorry. I would say in the last 3 years, I have thought of blocking in energetic terms. And I think that's a cool way to look at it because we are protecting our energy when we block, we're like not allowing that in. And that's really important. That it makes a huge difference. And then I went through this phase where I unblocked a lot of people. I thought, I don't like blocking, so I'm going to open it back up. But and I did. And I allowed all that just to flow more freely. But I still thought of it in energetic terms. And I think I'd done so much work on myself that I was able to do that and handle it a little differently if they did come back around. And I guess it was kind of a little bit of a test too, to see how those people came back, if they did, how they showed up. And a few of them have shown back up. One of them that I'm thinking of in particular showed back up in a way that I didn't like at all. And I just stepped up and said, this isn't working for me. If you continue to do this, then I'm going to block you again. So, it's up to you. I'm not going to allow this. So it gets into boundaries too, but it's really a good shift to think of blocking in an energetic term and think of protecting your own energy.
You train the universe to welcome the right people when you block.
Ooh.
Right. Now I'm just going to keep it real. I always thought it was an emotional tactic because I've had it done to me in a past relationship.
It can be a very passive aggressive, emotional tactic for sure.
It's so funny because when you look at it, when the smoke clears and the dust settles, that exact same person had to reach out to me to basically give me back my flowers. But my response back was kind of like a blockage, just how I responded back. You know what I mean? Because it didn't give room for, what do you mean by that? You know what I mean? So sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, don't use the block button as a way to reap something from somebody. But if somebody doesn't show up for you the way you need to be shown up for, or they're disrespecting your time, or they're disrespecting you, or your family, or your friends, you got to get rid of it. Don't open
That's
it
a really,
back up.
really
Don't
good
open
point.
it back up because some of these people do not change. They'll say they'll change.
Well, if you're going back and forth with it, if you're going back and forth and you're trying to manipulate, you're using it as a manipulation tactic. And it's a good opportunity to check in with yourself and say, why am I really doing this? Because if you're going back and forth, then you're hoping that what you do is affecting them and you're controlling it, attempting to control it in some way. That said, I would like to hear some of your thoughts on control. Like, as far as, since you are such a planner like me, letting go of control has been challenging in different situations in my life. And so how do you view control and giving up control in your own life?
I gotta laugh because control can be so. It depends on what element you look at it in, right?
I don't mean doing basic. Well, I actually do. I mean, even logging on your computer. I mean, any control, because so many times, well, actually all the time, we can't really control anything outside of our own feelings. So it kind of goes across the board, no matter what.
I have an issue giving up control.
I suspected that might be a thing for you when you're a planner like me. We like lists. We like, getting a handle on things. Plus, you're a male.
What does that mean?
It means I think the masculine naturally leans a little bit more toward exerting control, planning, all those more typically masculine elements, where the female can be more about the flow and, getting into your feminine is more about going with the moment and things like that.
I guess to a degree. I agree. That'll be in the next podcast we'll get into.
Okay. No, I'd love to hear what you have to say about it right now, though.
Yeah. Masculine control. In some cases, you can give up control, right? But if it's like somebody was to say, hey, listen, I can do this, and this with the podcast, like editing. No, I'll just do it myself. But as you grow, you're not going to be able to do it yourself. That makes sense? So you have to build those right trusting patterns and things like that make the most sense. But as far as other control, there's sometimes you can give up your control, but there's sometimes you just have to take all that in.
Like what?
Love life.
Uh-oh. Okay. You're trying to control that?
In some degrees.
Tell me more.
Tell you more?
Tell me more. In what degrees?
As far as just with time, right? Like I said, I had to say fun. It's funny. I had this conversation earlier this morning with a couple guys. And I said, when you work 40, 50 hours a week, it's going to be very hard it's going to be very, very hard to really entertain dating. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
So my control now has to be through time, right? Because I don't have a lot of it to spare. So if I give you the time, that's me giving up a little bit of my control. Makes sense?
I mean, is that really giving up control though? It's kind of just allowing and stepping into a different space. I don't know that
it's giving up control to a degree.
It is.
Yeah.
Giving up control of your own time. Is that it?
I'm selfish with my time, man. I'm selfish with it.
I think that's a good thing. I think that that's, about your energy, and you should be selfish with your time. I don't know that that's the same thing as trying to control it. I think that might be more just really.
Are you reading me right now?
Staying
Are
conscious.
You reading me? I feel like I'm getting read. You're going to read my cards?
Maybe. You want me to? I'll go grab a deck real quick.
Yeah. You have enough time?
Maybe. I have a deck down here that I really like. We could draw a card for you before we end in a little while. But I think it's really interesting to tap into the ways that we're trying to control, because ultimately, even if you are trying to control your time, you don't have control over that. Someone could stand you up. Someone could, not honor your time. I mean, even when we were logging in here and, you were having a few technical difficulties, you said, I'm wasting your time. And I didn't have control right then. And I was just okay with that. According to me, you were not wasting my time. I had plenty of other things I could think about at that moment. I was fine for you to do that. But I do a lot of work around control too, to just say, that's okay. Do you get stressed out if you feel like you're doing that to someone?
I think because I set the bar, right? That I always like to show up early as a new on time, right? So using a new device, little terminal thing here, not everything was set up when I went in. Right. So I got to go mic to soundboard to the new little doohickey from Apple. So it's like, yeah, I feel like I'm abusing the person's time because I wouldn't want that to be done to me. And it's like, what do you want to put out there in the universe? You know what I mean?
But if it was done to you, would it really bother you?
Depending on who the person is.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, it's conditional.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because me and you have a vibe. We got a vibe going on, right? And I feel like I said, this is like 2 years in the making for everything, right? So it's like, I know you from the back end messages and things like that versus some random person that I may have just had like one conversation with. And it's just like, well, they show up like 15, 20 minutes late and I'm sitting here, okay, what do I do? Paperwork? Do I start editing another podcast?
Yeah. Do you think that's like a disrespect that, do you think it comes from that? Like a disrespect?
It is a disrespect to a degree.
Would you, to a degree?
To a degree, because I think the most people that are very mindful of their time, the first thing they're going to do is they'll reach out to you ahead of time. And I've had that happen with some top tier professionals. I was shocked, like 30 minutes before, hey, like, listen, I'm going to be about 5-10 minutes late. And I'm like, wow, okay. And they come into the conversation and it's just like, hey, my apologies, I'm late, this and that. I'm like, that shows you people that are mindful. I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but you can respect that a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that again goes back to our communication. It goes back to really like just saying it, because that can be respectful. Anytime we can just say, right? Like, and again, you're just communicating. You're just saying, hey, I'm having this go on. And you talking about plugging this into that and that, I mean, you are talking my language. I've worked in audio for 30 years off and on. I know what a pain in the ass it can be. And I have so much compassion for it. And I'm like, take your time. Don't get stressed, figure it out, because I know how that can be. And so, I think that anytime you're able to, I would just encourage anyone to speak what's going on and to just be honest, because when we show up like that, it sets a tone of respect.
So true.
Yeah. Look at us. We're figuring things out.
It's what we can do, though. It's the most important
That's
thing.
right. Would you consider, do you have a notes that is all about your values? Have you done work to figure out what your values are? Is respect just one of your top ones, would you say?
Respect is probably the big one. It's the number one.
Me too.
It's the number one and the number two.
Mm. Yeah, it's a big one. I actually, it's one of my rules in the house for my kids. And that's, treat everyone with respect. And that includes yourself. And would you say that treating yourself with respect is why you're able to make those lists and hold yourself accountable?
Absolutely. Because I respect myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
The bar that I set for myself, and I get it, not everybody here is perfect. I'm not a perfect person. But when you have so much respect for yourself and what it is you want to do and where you want to go, you never want to come short of that bar. You know what I mean? And that's just how it is. And it's crazy because people then see, like, guys that I know, like, sometimes they'll say, like, hey, like, listen, we're going to meet here at 9:15. And they show up at like 9:30. Man, I'm sorry. I can take that. I can accept that. You know what I mean? Because guess what? Shit happens.
Yeah.
Maybe you forgot where that outfit is. Where's them pair of jeans you're going to wear? Or maybe that shirt you're going to wear. It happens. You know what I mean? As long as you apologize, most important thing. That's it. Sorry.
I have a question. When you look back at the old version of yourself, maybe the one that wasn't showing up for yourself, maybe the one that was gaining weight, or, before you had a transition and really started taking care of yourself. When you look back on that version of yourself, are you judgmental of yourself, or do you look back now with a compassion to yourself and an understanding of where you were at that moment?
More of a compassion and understanding.
Has that taken work for you? Have you always felt that, or did that take some work to get to?
How I'd answer it is everything takes work. You know what I mean? Everything takes work. And I think that you know where you came from that you don't ever want to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
But at the same time, we can thank ourselves, and love ourselves wholly, right? And in those older spaces, and understand that we were doing what we could, doing the best we could, right?
You said it right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever get hard on yourself now and judge yourself now, or would you?
You're getting my therapist, man.
You're a life coach, so I really want to know, what you do and how you cope with those moments, because those are very human things to do.
No.
And so, how do you turn it around for yourself if you have those moments? And if you don't have those moments, what in your mind prevents that or allows you to stay out of those negative spaces?
So I'll say this, and it may sound like I walk around the force field in a bubble. I always find a way to surround myself with the right energy. And I think just how I hold myself in a frame keeps me like that. So if I go out, there's not really a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not trouble, but there's not a lot of negative elements that will come around us in the circle, because I'm the yin and yang of the balance. And I think that's just how you present yourself through the universe or through your faith, right? And one of the things I'll tell a lot of your audience and my audience is that one of the things I always say when I go to bed at night when I pray is, I say, God, remove every single stumbling block away from me. Do not let any negative elements inside, even though that there's negative around us. But the more you keep saying that, the more you're training the universe to respond back to you in the right manner. So that's why when you think, well, hey, maybe I missed that opportunity with that person. If this, hypothetically speaking, it's dating, it's a reason. there was a disconnect. That energy wasn't aligning. Because I've always said is God always finds the right things to surround us with at that right present time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Not to get too spiritual with everybody on the podcast, but that's just something that I truly believe in.
We get that way here. We're that way here. So please bring that here. I want to know more. Like, I'd love to know more about, how long you've been doing a prayer practice before bed and what that looks like, and what happens when you wake up, and what your mental practices are.
Oh my goodness. I've had the Bible open beside my bed since I was 16.
Wow. How old are you now?
I was 16. 38.
Okay.
38 going on 22.
Same.
No, but the biggest thing for me was just always having that faith. Doesn't matter if I go to church or not, but I've always had that faith, right? I've always made sure I give thanks to the Lord above, because he's been there for all the great times and he's been there for the not so great times. So I always give thanks. It's the most important thing. And one of the most underrated things people don't do is give thanks. Give thanks. Say thank you. Man. I take calls from work, right? And I always say is thank you for calling, even though they're calling me to find a scenario or solution. When you find that solution, but you tell them thank you, it's crazy how the conversation even goes a little bit much more deeper. Hey, thank you for answering. And it shows up in the review. It shows up in your grades. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. What about when you wake up in the morning? Is that what you do? You say thank you in the morning as well, or?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Listen, got to tell everybody thank you. Thank me for waking up. Thank the Lord. Thank you for the coffee, everything.
Do you say thank you even for any negative things that come your way?
No, we don't thank the negative things. We can't do that. Come on now.
Oh, yeah, you kind of can. Yeah.
How so?
You can.
How so?
I could thank Justin's relapse. Let's take that for example. When he relapsed last year, that seems like a negative, but I could thank it because it moved us into a better way of communication, and it moved us further into a relationship, and it needed to happen. So it's probably essentially a reframe, but we can find gratitude for absolutely anything. I'm a believer.
Makes sense.
And it goes with like not judging whether it's good or bad. You just sort of say, hey, that's life. And I'm able to find gratitude for everything.
So true.
Like, can you find gratitude for the technical difficulties that you had earlier? I mean, I can. It gave me another couple minutes to get settled, and so that was okay with me.
I know we're still recording.
Yeah.
I have like a minute tops because I have a 2:05.
Oh, yes, you do. That is right. No, I'm glad you told me. You know what? When you said how long we had, I forgot that we were in different time zones. So I apologize for that. So let's get one last thing in. I know you have a meeting right now. So let's get one last thought in, and then we will share how everyone can find you. So if you had to leave everyone with one last thought, what would that be?
We're in September, right? And that's what I want people to do. Don't make the New Year's resolution on January 1st, 2023. Make your resolution now of how you're going to show up for 2023. Because too many people, January 1st, Happy New Year. This is my New Year's. No, your New Year's resolution starts now. It's fourth quarter, right? So if there's any sports fans that know what fourth quarter means, that means that's the Tom Brady, the Peyton Manning, the Michael Jordan, the LeBron James, and the Kobe Bryant. Amy Edwards, it's been a pleasure.
It has been, and you're so right. Live every day. Make those resolutions right now. Don't wait. And thank you so much. Everyone will be able to find you in all the show notes and listen to your podcast, Mitchell Report Unleashed. And I was a guest on a very recent episode, so I will put a link to that as well, where you can hear more and hear a lot more from you. And I just want to say thank you so much. Everyone follow him too at officially.rory.
Hey, Amy.
Anything
It's
I
always
missed?
love. It's always love out here.
Well, thank you so much. I want to speaking of gratitude, thank you so much for taking the time. And I'm sorry we ran into your meeting a little bit, but
Don't worry about it. Don't worry
hopefully
about
they'll understand.
it. They'll understand.
They
It'll be
will.
fine.
They
All
will.
right.
Sending so much love, Rory. Thank you so much for the way you show up in life and for being here today.
Thank you.
Take care.
This has been the Amy Edwards Show from Overcome Studios. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And thank you so much for being here. Sign up for our newsletter at amyedwards.com.